Let's take you back to our discussion on the state capture inquiry now. More revelations from the commission this week. The inquiry heard how some journalists received money from the state security agency. It's alleged the money was to counter negative publicity against former President Jacob Zuma and the country. It's expected the commission will reveal the names after Rule 3.3 notices have been served. We're joined by Wits University Professor Anton Harber, who's also a Caxton Professor of Journalism. Anton, a very good afternoon to you. So this also just comes off of the back of SANEF's inquiry into media ethics and credibility, where the panel had some damning findings there. What do you make of the state of journalism in South Africa?
Obviously, there are major issues in journalism, as highlighted by the Satchel report, as you called it, the SANEF inquiry into media ethics and credibility. And these are multifold areas, but the core problem is the financial pressure on the media industry and on the news industry and on journalism that's really compromising the capability of newsrooms to do the job they're meant to do. That was what was highlighted by the reports, but what emerged this week at the Zondo Commission indicated that another problem is that state security agents have been deliberately trying to mess with journalism, trying to undermine the independence of journalists and compromise their ability to do their job properly. So we're seeing a multifold problem here that we need to confront.
Given that the choices that journalists make affect people's lives in an existential manner, is it just about a financial issue? Who is a journalist, or what is a journalist, perhaps, if we can go back to that?
It's not just a financial issue. It's exacerbated by the financial pressures our newsrooms are under that make it harder for them to deal with these issues and to establish or re-establish proper journalistic practices. There are these days many citizens who do a lot of what journalists do, but journalists are professionals who abide by a code of conduct, who obey certain rules, who conduct themselves in certain ways, who appreciate and abide by the rules of practice and ethics that define what we do as journalists. That's different from ordinary citizens writing or expressing their view or even reporting news.
The Zondo Commission, as we mentioned, according to Ms. Kay's testimony, about journalists that were paid to paint a certain picture of the former president or of the country. This is nothing new. We go back to the Muldergate or information scandal of the apartheid regime in the 1970s. Millions that were taken from the defense budget and shifted towards painting a beautiful picture of the then regime. Given that this is, if you will, a repeat of history, should then a media tribunal be set up?
I'm not sure how one leads to a media tribunal. What you're pointing to is the misbehavior, the poor conduct of the state security agencies undermining journalism, undermining the independence of journalists. So what we need to do is be addressing what the state security agent does. Now, we as journalists, I hope, will take action against any journalist who's seen to have compromised themselves by taking money from the state security agency. But that is for us in the industry to do, and to isolate them from the community and profession of journalists. But if we need a tribunal, it's to monitor and oversee the actions of the state security agency, which has clearly been totally out of order and undermining our democracy.
There are also calls for journalists to make known or to subject themselves to lifestyle audits. Is that something that also could deter people from taking money where they're not supposed to?
That suggestion made in the Satchel Commission is an interesting one. It certainly is part of a wider call to find ways in which to prevent journalists from having their independence compromised by SSA agents and others who try and buy their loyalty and compromise their independence. So it's one of a number of suggestions. I think that lifestyle audits will be a difficult thing to do in the private sector in an area like journalists, but it's certainly something we should look at and examine and see if it's possible. There's also a suggestion that journalists show the same transparency in accounting for their interests, their financial and business and personal interests in the way that's required of parliamentarians and judges. And I think that's probably a first very good step. We journalists demand transparency of people who are in the public eye, and we're in the public eye, so I think we need as well to open ourselves up to transparency and declare our interests in the public eye.
Wits University Professor Anton Harber, he's also a Caxton Professor of Journalism. Thank you.